Good afternoon, everyone. We hope everyone's having a good morning. And I've had some people ask about our surprise this week. And here's our surprise, Sister Linda Miller. And it's a wonderful surprise. And she's going to share with us today about the history of the church. And it's a great history, and she's a charter member of our church. And she'll be going back and telling about how the church was established and formed and some of the memories that she has. And we really appreciate Sister Linda taking time to be with us today. And before we get any further, I'd like for us to go to the Lord in prayer and just ask God to direct us and guide us today. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear God, we're so thankful today, Lord. You give us the sunshine yesterday, and today you've given us the rain. And we thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you have given us. And what a privilege it is today, Lord, to be able to do this with Sister Linda. She's such a dear lady to all of us, a dear friend. And Lord, she's my family. And I love her, Lord, with all my heart. And what a privilege it is to be able to do this today. Thankful for Nick and Noah and making this possible. And Lord, as we talk about your goodness and talk about the history of our church and how you had your hand upon it, God, just bless and guide and lead and direct us and speak to hearts, Lord, like only you can. And all these things we ask and pray in your name, dear Jesus. Amen. Amen. All right. Just going to turn Sister Linda loose here, and she's going to give us the history of the church and recollections that she has. So it's all yours, Sister Linda.
Okay, we're going to take a trip down memory lane, I guess. And actually, it's going to go back 61 years. That's kind of telling our age a little bit. But I came to Ohio in February of 1958. Began attending a church over on 191 South Arlington. Some people recognize that address. It was called the Old Time Gospel Mission. Just a storefront building. It was a two-story place, so there was someone lived on top of us. Sometimes our services got a little loud and they'd start stomping the floor. When I started there, Red Holden was the pastor of the church, and Don Tenney was our assistant pastor. A couple years later, Brother Don actually resigned and began pastoring a church over in Lakemore, Ohio. So we decided then we really needed to find somewhere else to have church. That wasn't working too well there. And the church had been there several years before I ever got there. So we moved over on Waterloo Road. We had a building there in that corner, and it was all ground floor, but there wasn't a whole lot of parking there. But we were there probably about a year. Then we found out there was an auction house empty over on Crumroy Road. And it was like a duplex type thing. So one side of it was empty. So again, we moved the church over on the Crumroy Road. During that time, then Reverend Holden resigned. We had 2 or 3 preachers that preached for us at that time. One of them comes to mind was a Brother Blue, and we had a Brother Paul Gerald that actually preached for us for a while. But Brother Earl Ellis was one of them that had been with our church for a while, and he was now preaching. So eventually he was elected as pastor of the church. During this time, then, we began looking for a church building because kind of got tired of these storefront places and small ones. So found a church down at 325 South Van Buren, which you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
So in 1962, we purchased that church, and it was actually the old Friends Church. If you remember, there's a Friends Church now beside the school on Robinson Avenue. This was their old church. So we bought that church from them. When we went in, there was no water, no bathrooms, kind of but it did have a basement, which was one thing that we was happy about, because up until that time, we never had classrooms. You would have curtains that you would try to divide the rooms where you'd try to have your Sunday school classes. But we had a basement there, so we were happy. Old piano in the basement. You know, Sister Kathy sings a song, and every time she sings it, my mind goes back to that. She talks about 30 kids in an old church in that basement, and an old piano out of tune, and that kind of reminded me of what we were then. So after we moved to Barberton, though, we changed the main name of the church then, was changed to Barberton Community Church. because we were no longer a mission. So we were there for 3 or 4 years and finally changed the name to a Liberty Baptist Church because we needed to let people know what our beliefs were at that time. And so while Brother Ellis was pastor, the church was founded and organized as Liberty Baptist Church, and that was back in 1964. So we continued with church there for another 2 or 3 years. In late 1966, I think it was, Brother Earl resigned. He had retired. He worked at Chemical in Barberton, PPG, I think it was then. He retired and he was moving back to Ellijay, Georgia, his hometown. So when we began looking for a pastor, we had Reverend Gerald Kelly. At that time, Gerald was a young preacher. I've heard people tell, and I think he even admitted it was true, that there's times you could see him walking down Barberton with his guitar case and his white buck shoes. He preached for a lot of the churches around. Brother Gay Tenney had a church down there at the time, and he preached around at all of the churches. And so we asked him then if he would consider being pastor of the church. So he told us he would take it on a 6-month trial, and that was back in 1966. Well, kind of stuck with us then. So while he was pastor, we began looking for property where we could actually build a church. And actually, Brother Sam Pidcock helped us with that because he kind of, I think I mentioned to you, he kind of dabbled in real estate on the side. So we found these 5 acres that we're on here now. I think it's about 5.5 acres. We purchased that for $12,900 back in that day. And we had plans to build a church. And that year, 1970, Brother Kelly finally, he quit his job and went full-time, and he was our first full-time pastor here at the church. Next 3 years, we spent trying to raise funds to build a church. We had an architect draw up plans. It was going to cost us $87,000 to build that church. I kind of went on the internet this morning just to check. Back in 1970s, $87,000 today would be worth $593,000 in our money now. So you can see back then that was a lot of money. I mean, people were making maybe $1, $2 an hour. So, we had to trust God really to get the funds. But during that time, it was kind of funny. We kept trying to get a loan, and finally Wayne Savings told us they would give us a loan for $69,000. But we had to raise the other $18,000 to put with it to build the church. So we began then starting a fund. And one of the things that sticks out in your memory, Brother Kelly made a foam building of that church, and you may remember that because you were a young boy then.
I do.
But he made a foam picture of that church, and it's set up right up front of the church, so we could always look at it and know what we were working for. And actually, it was kind of funny because one of the cherry blossom parades, one of the young boys in the church put that church on a wagon. We put a sign on it that said the Future Liberty Baptist Church, and he pulled that in a parade during a cherry blossom festival.
Yeah.
So we began trying to raise funds. Well, it wasn't easy to do back in those days, but actually we began selling pews. We sold all of the pews. I think it was like 24 pews that we had. Everybody, pretty much every family in the church had bought a pew. We sold, people paid for the doors and the windows and the classrooms, the nursery. Our ladies' aid paid for our own restroom. People just kind of came together, to get the funds together so that we could get the money we needed. Finally, in May of 1973, we had our $18,000 raised. We gave that money to Wayne Savings, and they gave us the loan in for $69,000, so we had the $85,000 that we needed. They dispersed the funds themselves as the building was started. In the summer of '73, we started building the church. Actually, the outside was put under construction by Miller Builders. I think they were a Mennonite group. And they put it all under roof. But the inside then was pretty much all done by the men and the women of the church. And I say the women because we did have a lot of help. We did a lot of the painting. As the men would finish a room, we would paint it. And one of my greatest memories when I sit and look up at the auditorium ceiling, they made a big scaffold, and I mean it was like a big platform that went extended way over, and they made it so we could sit up there, and us women would get up there with rags, and we stained that ceiling in the auditorium like that.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and then we would stain the doors, and so it was just a come together thing where everybody worked.
Awesome.
The guys that worked, Doug worked second shift at that time, so we would get up in the mornings and come out here and work until time for him to go to work, and then we would leave, and then the other people that worked the evening shift would come in. So really, it was just kind of a conglomeration of everybody working together and getting it all together. So finally, we began the construction then, as I said, in '73. We actually had our first service here in this church on February 3rd, 1974. The auditorium wasn't completed, so we had church in the big classroom in the back because we still needed the carpet down and we needed the pews in it and whatever. So for the next 3 months we had church there. And in the meantime, too, we sold the property on Van Buren. We sold it to St. Timothy Bible Way Church on a land contract deal. So we did have a little bit of money coming in from that. So we're a small congregation. I mean, nothing like we are today. So after first service there in the classroom, finally on April 21st of '74, we had the first service in our auditorium. That was 46 years ago.
Wow.
So come a long way since then. The church was actually dedicated then in June of 1974, and Reverend Kelly pretty much was the overseer of the whole building. He was here the whole time and looked after it and made sure everything was done. Then he stayed with us until 1982. He resigned in 1982 and moved to Bradley, West Virginia to pastor Free Will Baptist Church. Also during that time we had changed our beliefs over to Free Will Baptist. We joined the Free Will Baptist organization back in 1981, which is what we are now today. So during that time then, from the time he left, from 82 to 96, I guess it was, we had about 4 pastors. Brother Alex Sekulich was the first one, and then Reverend Johnny Castle was our pastor for a short time. Brother Darrell Curry was pastor. And then our last one before you came was Reverend Gary Deal. And Gary was with us for about 7 years. During this time, one of my greatest memories is we paid off the mortgage for this church in February of 1992. And I had the privilege of burning the mortgage in our Sunday morning service.
Amen.
It seemed like a long way then. It took us, but actually 20 years or so, it paid it off faster than what we were supposed to.
That's good.
And so then when Reverend Deal resigned in 1996, we began looking for a pastor. Guess who we found?
Bless her heart.
We reached out to Brother Cecil, who was, I think, pastoring a church in Nashville at that time.
Yeah.
And he was asked if he would like to come back and pastor his home church.
Man, what a privilege. What a privilege.
It was
absolutely privilege.
So, of course, as you know, he came back. So he's our pastor, has been our pastor now for 23 and a half years, I think it has been.
You guys put up with me a long time.
Had Brother Chad Booth, who was saved in the church, has got his calling in the church, and he is our assistant pastor. And wonderful man of God.
Yes.
We've got the best pastor and assistant pastor in the state of Ohio, well, all over. Everybody should feel that way, and if they don't, you should get out and find you another church.
We got the best church in the world.
So it was a long time it seemed coming. Doug and I were married in 1967, and actually for the next 42 years until the time of his death with cancer, 2009, we worked in the church. Held just about every position that you could hold. He was a song leader, Sunday school superintendent. We had VBS a couple times. He was chairman of the board and VBS director and youth leaders.
Yeah,
you know about that.
One of them.
Had a very good youth group, but his greatest joy, I think, was probably his choir director that he had the last few years of his life. He loved doing that.
Yes, he did.
During that time, I was Sunday school teacher, a secretary, a youth leader, and for 25 years I was treasurer of the church.
Yes.
I guess that's why I remember so much of this, because I was dwindling out a lot of the funds during that time. But it's been a good journey. It's been a long journey. And I guess one of the things that I love about this church is it's had such an outreach.
Yeah.
When you stop and think about some of the ministers, a lot of the people around know Brother Jimmy Ellis.
Yep.
He was saved in this church. He left this church, got his calling to preach in this church, and he left and went and pastored the Home Missionary Baptist, I think it was.
Yep.
Your Arthur Hobbs, I think, was your uncle, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He at one time was our assistant pastor and started preaching, and he left to pastor in Kentucky.
Yep.
Of course, we had Brother Gary, who was left, and he was pastoring. I think he's pastoring now in Newark, Ohio.
Yep.
Pastored down south.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother, Brian Farmer,
Yep.
is pastoring up in Michigan.
Michigan.
We say that.
He's on right now.
Sorry, Brian.
He made a comment about your shirt this week.
But
You went purple this week.
Yeah, I got a different shirt. Yeah.
we also have Todd Tennant, Bart and
Yep.
Larry's son, and
Yep.
he's pastoring down in Manassas, Virginia.
Yep.
We've got John Larison, who's also saved
John.
in the church.
Mhm.
He's pastoring, I think it's in Parkersburg, right?
Yeah, right outside of it. Yeah.
And then Kevin Stutler, who's now pastoring up in Kent Pretty Well Baptist. So
Yep.
we've had a really big outreach over the
A lot.
years when you think there's very few churches that actually can say that.
That's right.
And
That's
actually, right now, we've got 8 ministers in the church.
We sure do. We sure do.
Besides you and Chad.
Got a whole slew of
Bunch
them.
of young ministers,
Yeah.
and of course, with our senior ministers, besides you, we got Brother Boggs and
Yeah.
Brother Ash and Brother Sparks, and so
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
got a lot of people to preach to us. Let's put it that.
Oh yeah.
And we've always been blessed with talent here.
Yeah, we have.
I got to thinking, the first brother or sister Blake was our first pianist here, and she played for several years. When she finally resigned, Tammy Hunter, well, I'd say Tammy Hunter Spencer,
Yeah.
took over, and she played for us until Brother Kevin came along and stole her away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after she left, then my daughter Michelle played.
Yeah.
And she played for several years till we lost her to one of the fishermen quartet. He
Yeah.
come and married her and moved her up in the country.
Yeah.
And after that, we got Tricia.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for Tricia. Tricia has been with us now, I guess, about 30 years, playing the piano for us.
Yeah.
And I know Doug really enjoyed working with Tricia. They worked
Yeah.
with the choir and really had a good choir at that time.
Yeah.
And Tricia's really been faithful. And right now we've got Brother Noah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
playing the piano for us too, and
That's right.
doing a good job backing up. And we're so privileged to have Brother Noah here to play for us too. So we've always had pretty much what you needed. We've got talent. We've got pianists. Besides the pianist, we've got guitar players, 3 or 4 guitar players.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
One of them even plays a mandolin, and so
Yeah.
we have a lot of singers. And I got to thinking we've got singers probably from age 4 maybe,
Yeah.
clear up to age 80.
Yes, absolutely. You're one of them.
I'm one of the younger ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our church has always had a good, strong youth group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back when we had the youth group, a lot of the kids that was in our youth group are now the workers in our church.
Yeah.
And you're a pastor. We've got Scott and Trish, that's our youth leaders.
Right.
And your
Right.
son is now, of course, he wasn't in our group then, but the young people now.
Yeah.
He's our Sunday school superintendent, and
Yeah.
Dustin is the head of the junior church. So
Yeah. Yeah.
basically, we're pretty much where we're at right now. Nowadays, we've got
Yeah.
a lot going. Got a good church. Probably, I don't know what, 175 to 200 people on it.
Yeah, you know what,
Sunday
Sister Linda, I was counting. Melissa was helping me the other day, and I almost broke out into tears because and we could have counted more, but we just pretty much counted the people that come, pretty much all, and it was right at 200. When everybody comes,
Yeah.
it's right at 200. Yeah, yeah,
And
Yeah.
it's a good scattered
yeah,
congregation. I mean, their
Yeah.
ages. We've got, 20, 30 kids in our junior church.
yeah,
We've
yeah.
got probably the same amount of youth.
Yeah.
And then we've got the age in between, your age,
Yeah, yeah.
30s to 50s to 60s, and then we've got quite a few of us seniors in our
Yeah.
church.
And we
So-
need everybody.
Yeah, we do.
We need everybody.
That's what makes a good church, is you're able to
That's right.
actually, I don't know, I guess minister at everyone, I guess, at that age, and you got them growing up, and they grow up, and Nick was asking us before church about, and I'll tell him this, what our preaching was like when we were down on Van Buren, if it was like what we have today, and yes, it was. I told him, if you knew Brother Kelly at all, it was.
Yeah.
They were good, hard preachers. It was
Yeah.
never. We kind of chuckled when Brother Cecil left after he and Melissa were married. You left and went to Bible school.
Yeah, yeah.
One of Doug's biggest worries when you went to Bible college is he going to come back and be one of them that just stands there with his thing in front of us and reads to us?
Read your message.
I think they taught that a lot in Bible
They
school.
did, yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
thank goodness when you came back, you were our minister the way we liked preaching.
Well, I got made fun of, Sister Linda, but that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. You are who you are, right? We wouldn't have it no other way.
I think I heard you tell was that someone at your church really didn't think you could even come back and pastor your home church.
Yeah, I had a guy stand up when I resigned. We had an older gentleman stand up, and he told me I was making a mistake. He said, prophet's not without honor. Jesus said, saving his own. He said, you're going back to your home, and he said, it'll never work. He said, you're making a mistake. And, it hurt, but then, I got to thinking, well, he told me later, he said, I just don't want to see you go. I thought, there's a lot better ways to tell somebody that to get up. But you know what? It was God, Sister. That's why it worked. It was God.
Absolutely.
And when it's God, no matter what and you've seen it, and I want to tell this too. We ain't worried about the time today. Nick's the boss. He just waved it off. We'll go overtime. But when God's in something, and you're involved in this too, and I want to tell this, she mentioned outreach, and I think another reason too why the Lord blesses us is the outreach, and we've started this Good News Bible Club.
Yes.
And it is absolutely it's just blessed our church. I mean, we've had new people come from it, God. But Sister Landon, I want to tell that she is right in there. She's faithful to come to it. She gets right in there with the kids and works with them and hugs them and has to correct them every now and then. But she's right in there, and we appreciate her so much. I mean, she's still working for the Lord, and she's very faithful, and she's very heavily involved in that.
There's probably a lot of people that doesn't know what that is. Maybe you should explain what that Good News Club is.
That's a good idea, Sister Linda. It's an organization. It started in the late 30s. We never heard of it. None of us had ever heard of it. And we had a gentleman, Brother Spradlin, started coming to our church for a short time. And I think that's why God sent him here. He told us he told us about it. He said, there's something, he was involved in it. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I mean, it's right in the public school. It's called Good News Bible Clubs. And we start out in Norton, and now we're at an elementary school in Barberton East. And now we actually at West too.
West.
We had 2 of them this year. And you get to go in after hours, and the parents, of course, sign permission slips. The kids come after school, and we probably have, when they all come, it was in the 50s, wasn't it?
Yes.
At East, and West is probably in the 40s, and we can pray, we can witness to them. We've had kids get saved. We have Bible lessons, we have crafts, we have activities. They have memory verses.
Yes.
And it's awesome. I mean, in a public school, we get to proclaim the name of Jesus. And we've had families start coming to our church from it. So if anybody's listening and you have any thoughts, it is one of the greatest things that's going out there. They are genuine, and it's the King James Version of the Bible too.
Yes,
I mean, it's awesome. And the Good News Bible Club, it's called Child Evangelism Fellowship. And it has really been a blessing to our church. It is really, and Sister Linda's involved in that, and so the work of the Lord just keeps going right on, and it's just a wonderful thing.
Well, I've heard people say there's no retirement in
There you
Christian
go.
work, and there really is. Doesn't matter your age, there's always something you can do and be an influence, or just sit and pray if you need to.
That's right.
And,
That's
and
right.
it's really good to get the children when they're young.
That's
And
right.
I debated on telling this or not, this on my daughter. I've said a lot of times you need to watch what you say in front of your children because they can pick it up. At the time we were down on Van Buren, I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm going to tell this. She was only somewhere between 2 and 3 years old, and we would go for Wednesday night service. But Doug worked second shift, so I would take her and go myself. You know, our services didn't start till about 7:30, and usually you were lucky if you got out by 9 o'clock, you know. So this particular night we went, and it was one of the services that just kind of went on, and after about an hour you thought, okay, we're about ready to go home. And any mother that's had a little child, 2, 3 years old, they get restless. We didn't have a nursery at that church. It was just basically the bathrooms. So Michelle got a little restless, and she'd keep saying, Mommy, I want to go home. I want to go home. And I'd say, well, when church is over, we'll go. Well, during that time, Brother Sam, bless his heart, we all loved him, but he loved the Lord, and he loved to stand and testify. So about the time we thought we was going to get out, Brother Sam hit the floor, and he started testifying. So he's going on and on. Well, Michelle's getting more restless. She's eaten all of her cookies. She's colored her books, and you know, the child is ready to go home. Finally, she gets over to me and she says, Mom, when are we going to go home? And I looked at her, and I was getting pretty exasperated too, and I said, we'll go when Sam sits down and shuts up. Well, you know what happened. I look around, and 2 minutes later, she's standing up on the pew, and she walks over to the middle, and she yells, and she could talk very plain at that age, and she yelled out, Sam, shut up. Everybody in the church heard her, but Brother Sam. So,
I hope you're watching, Michelle.
she was always very outspoken. I grabbed her and took her back to the bathroom as fast as I could. Of course, my face was about as red as it could be. And someone eventually told Brother Sam about that.
Hey, he got a kick out
loved
of it.
He loved it. From that on until even after she was married, he would come up to her and see her, and instead of saying hello to her, he'd get this big grin on his face, and he'd look at her and say, shut up, Sam. But you know, it was a lesson too. You need to watch what you say, because kids could pick it up. But
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
I've told
That's
that on
funny.
her a few times.
I'm glad you told that.
She's not going to be, but a lot of the people in the church had already heard that. But
Yeah, that's a
you
good
really have to be careful, because fortunately we have a nursery here.
That's right.
Kids get a little tired, or you get tired, or whatever, you've got a place to take it. But we didn't back in those days. Your kids sat right in the pew with you. You probably was raised like that.
Oh yes,
too.
ma'am. We didn't move, man. I knew I'd. Back in those days, you got pulled out and got whipped right, right there. Yeah, I got whippings many a time. And Sister Lynn, I really appreciate you coming, and you know, and I've thought a lot about this, and you know, we have plans for the future, and we've been praying and trying to put some plans in place to build us a fellowship hall here at the church, and that's in the future, and God's really blessing us. But you know what, I think about this. You never want to forget your past. You never, as you go into the future, you don't want to forget where you come from, and you don't want to forget your past. And Sister Linda, she knows the church. She's been from the beginning. It's been it's been her life, and also it was with Brother Doug, and I appreciate her and also Brother Doug and the impact they've had on my life, and Sister Linda, how would you, and I know this might be a hard question to ask, but just all the 60 some
61
years,
years, yeah.
61 years. If you how would you describe your feelings or your experiences, to sum it up, your work for the Lord, your work here in the church all these years? How can you put it into words, like how you would describe it?
Well, it's sometimes seems like it's been a long path, and it has, but it's been a good path.
Yeah.
I can look back and really be happy of what we were involved in, the people that we were involved with. I mean, Reverend Kelly was the big thing in getting our church started and helping us. A lot of the ministers along the way. I mean, there's good memories. There's nothing I can look back at and say I wished I hadn't done it. My children grew up in this church.
Yes.
And as we talked about, they were very strict when they were growing up.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think they've all appreciated that.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to go back and undo anything that's been done. It's been a long journey, but it's been a real good, pleasant one.
Amen. Amen. And Sister Linda, I'm sure you can look back and you mentioned some names, and I'm sure there's times somebody will come to your remembrance. Roger Evans, he calls me every so often, and he was here when it was built, wasn't it?
Time, yes.
And so you think of different people, and it comes to your mind, and I'm sure you think, well, now they did this or they was involved in it, and so everybody has a part in the work of the Lord. Everybody's important. Everybody's important.
And over the years, we've got pretty much a new church from what back then. We talked earlier, I think your mother's still here.
Yeah.
That came from our old church. Barb and Larry Tennant's still here, and
Yep.
Rodney and Marilyn's still here.
Yep.
And other than that, right off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else actually that's here.
Yep.
Everyone else is a new family, and boy, we sure do appreciate them.
Amen. Amen. It's great. I still get goosebumps when I go by that old church. That's where I got saved at.
Yeah. Sure.
And I still think about that just about every time I drive by there. And
Been a good journey.
yeah.
The old song, I wouldn't take nothing from a journey now. That's what I believe.
Amen. Amen. Well, I tell you, we could go an hour if it's up to me. We really appreciate you coming, Sister Linda. It really
Thank
means
you.
a lot.
I appreciate you having me. I
And
hope people's not disappointed at the way you built me up.
no, not at all, not at all. No, I guarantee you, ain't nobody disappointed. There ain't nobody, and we really and like I said before, you never want to forget where you come from.
That's right.
And I think when people do that, they suffer for it. I know we can't live in the past, but you never want to forget where you come from, how you started. You remember it, and you learn. You learn, and you grow from it.
Remember your roots.
You remember your roots. You never want to forget your heritage and what God's done for you. And the future is bright, and we're just thankful for the. You got anything you want to say, Nick? All right.
We appreciate Nick.
Oh yeah,
His
absolutely.
help, Noah helps him along, and
Yes.
they're a blessing to us.
We wouldn't be able to have these things while all this was going on, if it wasn't for these guys, and we appreciate it. We appreciate it very much. You have anything to say to close out, Sister
No,
Linda?
I think I've just about journeyed all the way back back to the present day.
So when you're driving down Arlington Street, right, in Akron,
191 South Arlington.
think about it. And the building probably isn't. Is it still there?
I doubt that it's there now. I
Yeah.
haven't been by there for a long time, but that was the beginning.
So, and I know we've had some people. Sister Linda was talking, I think, last night. We've got a lot of people that's new, and maybe this is the first time you've heard this. And so we're just thankful for your watching and listening. Appreciate Sister Linda coming, and it's been a great blessing. And Sister Linda, thank you for the impact you've had on my life. I've always looked up to you. And I thank God for you. We're family.
Yes,
we go way beyond church. We're family, and I thank God for you. I thank God for you, and Brother Doug, and we're going to see him again. We're going to see him again, and so we appreciate you all watching today. And Nick, you got anything you want to say? All right.
That's quite.
I think I got to tell this before we close. You got to have fun. You know, this is a little bit relaxed atmosphere from a church, sir. I told Sister Linda, I said, Nick, he'll give me hand signals. I said, I'm going to see if that carries over when we start having regular. Give it a signal to quit. No, you got to have fun. You got to have fun. All right. God bless you, and tune in Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, and we'll have service. We love you. Thank you for coming, Sister Linda.
You're welcome.
All right.